Alright, gigantic audience over there. How's everybody doing? I'm doing amazing. Alright, so this poem, I haven't really looked over it very much, but it's something that I wrote in between sets yesterday. It's called On Wishing and Acceptance. The thoughts damning thinking just won't stop coming. They're taking me hostage and massaging my ego. I try to escape, but the barrage of mirages floods my vision like wishes in a sky of raining shooting stars never fulfilled. So I learn to stop wishing. Like a car in a garage sitting and waiting to be driven unto destinies by ghosts of myself, unknowing where they're taking this body. All these passengers begging to visit this or that scenery, only able to see the back of the head of the one in the front seat. Who is it? Is it mommy? Is it daddy? Is it that one thing that happened to me that's turning us down this street? And will we have to turn around to get oil changes and tune-ups? While the mortality of it all keeps saying, are we there yet? Is this a dead end we're driving on, and how long until I get to finally relieve myself? In the arms of someone who shares a similar fate and will accompany these thoughts wherever they take us. Some women want certainty, but guys like me don't like taking or asking for directions. We freewheel and step on it when the road looks long and scare the shit out of the children left in us at how fast we're screeching away from home, and slow where the neighborhoods are nice and we can admire the houses, but I don't want them. I just want wind blowing through my hair and acceleration, trying to locate the balance between the feelings I get when sprinting, kissing, and doing meditation. That will tie it all together into one coherent picture of my numinous anatomy. But that's just another wish that nags me. And really, I think this is everybody. Whether monk or nun or man or woman or working poor or working or not working, rich or homeless or poet or psychic or religionist, or however you or I might identify ourselves by passers-by on a highway that gives way too many choices. We're tinkering for which way drives best, alternating between acceptance and wish fulfillment. All these stars shooting, trying to choose the brightest one, knowing the one wish may give the greatest happiness, or just might turn around and kill us. I can do that next one.
Get up.
So this poem is about sex. And it's called Why Real Poets Have Sex. And I wrote it last night. What is this being that you and I are participating in? My visage is beheld by you, a remnant of the day before, my cell's anticipation of what I shall become. And in the flight from there to there, here I am. A paper machete stick figure, a brightness in between two shades, a fading into darkened dens with evacuated jeans laying empty on carpet floors, where sacred communion is the sticky fluids entrusted between limbs, spread and folded into eagles so American, so African, so Indian, so barbarian, so human, and so you ask as I lift the chalice raised up to my lips to wet your whistle with some words from my philosophy. And I say, I was never anything, nor shall I ever be, but an untamed babe in shock at all the ways made up to say one thing and tell one story. So to do so would be simply to fill the silence with my language as an excuse to occupy this space and look at you from this perspective. And I am willing, but there are ways I'd rather speak than words then ways involving words, but my tongue will not be still to weten lessons learnt by speaking a native language born before the birth of diction, before Victorian era affliction and argumentation addiction. There was a feeling that said, what is this being that I participate in? And instinctually man went looking where he came from for the answer, returning some piece of himself to pay homage to a foreign land he once called home, and reminisce in manners vague rather than specific, because that could get creepy, of what untold truths were forgotten behind the veil of the uterus, and wisdom held in the subtle expectation of nourishment from maternal incubators for the sons and daughters of God, the fathers on their knees in prayer, sometimes reverently, sometimes violently, ever perplexed at what their cock is trying to point them to, like a flashlight in the dark used to illuminate another person. Men insert but cannot see the point of view that they are getting, and prostrate themselves before goddesses of fertility and let them ride, if only for masculinity to once look up to femininity and behold what qualities were stolen from our sides when androgynous human became male and female, and God became anthropomorphized, and Plato wrote of genders torn asunder and not satisfied, as the locks and keys go searching for the right combination to unlock mysteries, asking, what is this being that I am participating in? Who is this being I'm participating in? And what was lost to me that I am now within? Thank you.
All right, Andrew. Let's have another hand for Andrew.
All right, so this is entitled Darwin, Remove These Chains. Instinct like a bowel movement must be let out. Must pin the superego to get her done. This struggle brings the animal out of us. Soldiers die, casualties to Darwin's maker. There is a time for war, said the preacher. Not a time of war, a time for war, a time to purge ourselves with struggle, to find again our resilience, that we are animals deified by opposable thumbs. And Greeks, obsessed with the power-filled phallus, come to a time of testing, bursting forth life gods, the guardians of nations, the ones who make room for poets to see vulvas in roses and rock formations. Mother Nature, a cruel nun, striking hands with rulers, giving tests first and then lessons. Color struggle looking over brown picket fences. The dictatorship of the proletariat come long last. Power changes hefty hands, a slut for all who prove themselves worthy. Empires miscarried fall pitiful into dirty toilets, and nations like yogurt seem to have an expiration date. Sinners lay down their swords for saints to take them up and slay them there. The stories of it all boil up to power, and this struggle seems to be our salvation, for when we need strength, then we become strong, and wrong and right are secondary. Power is the engine that drives people like brute beasts gridlocked on tax reform, antlers locked battling for Mona Lisa, for Monica Lewinsky, driven by desire for how it must feel to be on top. Like animals deified by architecture, forks and spoons and guns, rationality, language, opposable thumbs, and I bet you've never thought of how much religion deifies us. Our belief in God makes us gods as we suck the yellow blood from beneath native feet and delicately wipe our lips. As we patrol oily Middle Eastern blood, Abu Ghraib blurs lines of distinction of who the terrorists are. As we see the animal in Hiroshima and grimace and worship before what we are capable of, instinctual self is who we minimize, preferring to be philosophers and scientists, presidents and poets. But it is pure instinctual self which keeps us alive, takes air without our notice, and makes room for prophets to see God in everything. We thinkers are indebted to the beast inside us, the beast inside others, the animals we call our mothers and fathers, driven to fuck like apes fuck and monkeys fuck and tigers fuck, who would have been just friends if not driven from within to fucking make us happen, bursting forth life gods who struggle every day of their life to find what star they came from, making messy bowel movements so much relief it is pleasure to let instinct save our necks and wipe afterwards as if we had something to do with it. And we read in the law of Moses that God is a man of war, and also that we are made in God's image. Like when fighting, we reach the zenith of godhood, when my romantic self thinks just the opposite, begging for swords to be beaten into plowshares. Thank you. Alright, so I'm going to read this pretty short poem that really has, I don't know, maybe almost nothing deep to it. And then if I feel like fucking around and seeing if there's time, I might read another one. This poem is called Condoms. From primal urges, subjects emerge as subtext for discussion over coffee. On the primary motivations of biological evolution. Like, who would have thought that sex was for procreation? I thought it just feels good and gets me closer to another person, but apparently it has something to do with bringing babies into the world, aka the survival and reproduction of my genes through the semen seed drones that grow up to feel such illusions as love. All one master scheme of the genes to continue reproducing, and some people have had to learn this the hard way. That's why we wear condoms, to interrupt ejaculate cock-blocking our genes stuck traffic jammed from fertility. So we rubber up, laugh at nature and say, "Ha-ha, the joke's on you. Watch what I'm gonna do. I get to have my cake and eat it too." Okay, they haven't started, so I could read. Are they starting right now?
Sound check.
All right. So this should be the end of the set then. You just welcome me while I look for my phone, you know. All right. So this ties into a poem that's going to be read later as part of a set. And I haven't actually looked at this poem since the last time I read it, but it's going to be fucking awesome. All right, it's called God's Ode to Boredom. It must be really boring just being God. Knowing all there is to know, seeing all there is to see, all at once being all there is to be. Bored in her own self-sufficiency, so that explains pretty much everything that occurs. So a certain kind of boredom is necessary to remember who we are and what this is. It is all made up. It all came out of nothing, and we are nature eating itself up. Trees replanting themselves and pigs cooking themselves. We are weather patterns of physics, tornadoes blowing and combining through the landscapes of each other's lives. We are the hurricane and the lives destroyed. Units of perception with all of this pivoting on the axis of our filtered awareness. Relative to us, the world is standing still in our honor, and the sun rises and bows in worship of our wakefulness. The stars shine down on us, and we are standing here on a floating rock, covered in water, air, and vegetation, where my down is China's up. But the truth is, we're floating, and directionality does not exist, but relative to points which relative to the infinite abyss are aimless on this canvas. As long as we are entertained by this, we are only seeing with two eyes eyes, and the mind's third eye remains closed. There is nothing new, and there are no original thoughts. I've been saying what's been said for thousands of years, and that's it. That's all that ever comes out of anyone's mouth, is syllables styled differently, fit within ready-made frames, a set of potential thoughts that can be had by combining certain words together or not combining other words together. We are operating within the archetypes we have set up for ourselves and a host of possibilities to keep us entertained as long as possible. Boredom is a proper response to performance. Laughter to calamity, virtue and vanity in the presence of God in profanity. This is nothing but a collaborative production made by atoms and bacteria and cells and animals, and us animals are encountering of a collective existence, a feeling of millennia of masterpieces leading up to this feeling of boredom. And maybe it's because I'm writing this to tune out a church sermon, but I'm bored as fucking hell, and I want to take this moment to affirm a few metaphysical truths. There is no loss in the universe, only change, and change is relative to the specificity of our finitude, because on the space-time continuum, each disparate happening is always there. Therefore, there is no loss, only change, and even change is relative to us. Therefore, death does not exist. It never happens. No one ever dies. Our sense of ourselves and our awareness is a crest on a wave, in a tsunami, rushing from a deep ocean. We are living in anxiety that we have a self that will die, but any self that could be rid of via elimination of preferences, details, hobbies, thoughts, behaviors, past, present, hopes, was never a real self anyways. So there is no death. Only waves crashing and receding and crashing again, like reincarnations and mathematical patterns of fractal-esque interconnectivity, meeting the same God, veiled in different masks, until we get bored enough of the masks we wonder to ask what's behind the mask. Are you bored of this poem yet? You should be. It's just another mask. And I'm only stating what you already know and have had a sixth sense of all this time. And if you disbelieve this, you only deny what you are but God, diluting your very essence over time with pretentious limits on yourself, diluting yourself enough to escape the dull humdrum la-di-da existence of this collaborative makeup session. Every action arises out of some kind of boredom and dissatisfaction. The premise for every doing being the believing that accomplishing something is accomplishing something other than diverting our attention from the game we've been playing with ourselves. In order to reach enlightenment, we must first become bored, and doing shit to not be bored runs counter to realizing what we ought to realize. We should become bored with fun, bored with love, bored with suffering and pain, bored with writing and hearing and reading and doing, and even bored with being bored, and persist through each experience to the boredom after the fall. And from that pure place of creation, make something for yourself if you wish, even if it won't be new. You must go to that place and come back with phantoms conjured up ex nihilo to represent your soul, made of debris blowing in the wind, the form of which you'll fuck up by attempting to clasp any creative moment in your hands. And that is us, ghosts, stranded, living our lives, grabbing at things and finding our hands empty. If we're bored enough, we can even pass our appendages right through ourselves. And there is no resolution to this tension, but what you choose. The choice is the primal creative act. Our divine sparks are drawn to like magnets, because God is the ocean, and God is the white foam crest. God is the clothes, and God is the flesh undressed. And God got bored, so God dreamt up this, and we are God's dreaming up reasons to live. We never do anything but what we want, and whether we admit it or not, we have no other reason to give. Thank you.
We're going to bring up Andrew. Please welcome Andrew to the stage.
Hello, all you terrible people. That's my greeting. Okay, so this poem is tentatively titled "Mushrooms and Brownies Seem to Always Cause Feelings Like This." It is written under the influence. The title may or may not change for purposes of parents and posting on Facebook, we'll see. But this is the poem. We are dreaming, and when moments become memories, we must learn to stay awake. Drifting lucid through multiplicities of mental states, sifting through them for a ghost we can call holy underneath them. Sometimes thinking we found something, other times thinking we found nothing. Remembering even this is just a phase in our awareness. So many things passing through us like strings and percussion, and stories told to us beside our beds, and terrors we have woken up from, and bodies passing back and forth within each other. Drinking deeply from the energy you and I can see floating from every item in this room. Each object a shape of ourselves that we have been or will be. Scissors and quarters and cell phones and rocks. We can be so many things at once that defining ourselves as anything is defying possibility. We should see even this moment as a memento of something that has just passed into gusts of wind and hurricanes, and we are sprinting so fast trying to catch up with the this, the now, the whatever the hell is going on here. Lucidity. We are undefinable beings even as we see and feel the borders boxing through us, groping vanity, impermanence, and futility. These are goads placed perfectly by God's good henchmen, guiding us to muses ready to make miracles, burst from wombs, terse held tight in each cell, infinitesimal, like crop circles from Pluto. Each one of these is a goad that God has given us. To let the existentialist in us pierce through us and realize there are more of these damn goads everywhere than any of us could have expected. They are all over everything right now. We are even made of them, so sensitive enough to see we could feel so much suffering, so much discomfort and angst laced into every bleeding second we are in this place. Oystered within, yoked to anything under the sun we could hope to find refuge in. Like genies through the desert sands, chasing mirages. Banging, banging, there is clanging from the outside, kitchen pans bashing. And at these times we can feel it. You know, those times when you feel like you're dreaming. It is circuitously frictious in a way we hope is not malicious to fracture us. But it is beyond that. It is each change in tempo, an invitation to forget the last song and become enthralled in dynamics you will find your limbs meshing with if you let them. Even though it is a new beat, even if you feel offbeat, all you can do is to keep breathing and you keep dancing. You stop thinking about what you should be doing and you become enthralled in learning what it is to be and be a being such as this. Undefinable by any microscope or telescope or isotope or shape or slope. You are not defined by shapes. Shapes are defined by you. You do not beat to tempos. Tempos beat to you. And seasons change for reasons we're not all that privy to. Like me and you going in and out of this dreaming, awake, lucid, so real waves, percolating pieces, shadowed, endowed. We are well-endowed beings to be so filled up in this awareness that the providential goads are invitations to openness, that the universe can always be weirder than you think it is. Those goads poking through as points inside poems, challenging us to speak to ourselves from different perspectives, to try on different voices and do that long enough to realize we're all just playing around and this is meant to be. And if it's not, it's wrapped up in inevitability, just as good as fate. You see, I know who you are, and you know who I am, because I see you, and you see me, and I am like you, and you are like me, just as I am as you, and you are as me, so whether or not we ever meet, we understand each other. I'm dying, and you're dying. But I'm not you dying, and you're not me dying. We are dying separately together. You and me, it seems undefinable even by these words, just letting the spirit move us whatever way it does. And sometimes the spirit seems to contradict itself, a goad to interrupt our Tao, to come to realize we have not been bowing to existence properly. I mean, look at me. Look at you! Who are we to be doing any of this? And we take one deep breath to swallow what we're doing, and that's the impact. A goad on top of a fucking goad. And there's God, fallen there. Dude's been through a lot, but there he is, still breathing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alright, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie Cloud Atlas, but Cloud Atlas is a life-changing movie. And this poem is written under the influence of the symphony in Cloud Atlas. It's called The Doctrine of the Cloud Atlas Sextet. The man behind the pulpit begins speaking to his children in his cave, saying, God is like the Koch brothers in the late 1950s, inserting millisecond frames of influence to reference to, because we all know how well that works in getting people to only buy what is for sale. And each moment is a snapshot, and our eyes too slow to catch the subliminal messages that life is vocalizing. But occasionally echoing and reverberating through our being, the voice of our subconscious catches up with us, and we call those leanings and inclinations and impressions the voice of God. Like each second is a beatific vision we are missing. Each fragment of a tattered life a contribution to the story of the God of God, clothing itself in the veiled curtains of humanity and canine-anity and elephant-anity and apricots. Each a fractal of the interconnectivity of all beings and non-beings, unfolding in the synchronicity of time that is really more like space, where the events of the moments of our lives are eternal splotches on a cosmic canvas with the gods looking down at them, while we, confused, walk along the sacred plane of being in all our infinitude, forgetting we will never really die. Because nothing ever really starts or ends. Because each full breath we have ever taken is still being breathed by us long ago on the other side of the cosmic circle. And every piece of this growing myriad of pictures which we wish to never end is still going on. And we are here forgetting that the only reason we don't know it and feel ourselves moving from frame to frame rather than eternally in each frame, eternally living, eternally dying, eternally learning to tie our shoes, coming forth from the womb, shaking the hand of the first person you ever sucked up to, formulating your first argument, awkwardly grabbing your first condom from a bowl of free condoms and preparing a will. It's because games are only fun when you're able to lose, and things are only worth fighting for if you're fighting against something. And hearing each story at once would certainly deafen us from all stories, and a plenitude of metaphors to pontificate upon a single metaphor makes each of them meaningless. Because if you have a box without an outside world, you don't have a box. Portraits are defined by their borders, and so people are defined by their limitations. So here we find ourselves, gods in disguise who invented religions as ways to worship ourselves while still acknowledging the frailty of our present incarnation. And just as public speakers like to repeat themselves, we do too, interchanging between you being me and me being you, and this process of forgetting is necessary, so that by the time I have lived 1,000 lives, I come into your feet, feeling brand new. You see, we are dreaming of ourselves, dreaming a dream where we were dreaming about ourselves, dreaming the dreamiest dream we had ever dreamed. So dreamy, we forgot we were dreaming and fell into the dream. And the dream became reality, because what is real and what is a dream when you are such subjective creatures as us, as this, where really the only thing that is really real is what we have sense of to be real at any given moment of time, which is more like eternal space, so that falling asleep we may just as easily be waking up as sleeping, so that finding myself on the other side of my eyelids, I enter through to the yellow brick road and fall down the rabbit hole into a truth that is stranger than fiction, yet true nevertheless, where Leonardo da Vinci in a past life is a caveman taking blood from the carcass of a bull, splattering it on the inside of Plato's cave, and telling his children, this is a picture of the universe cutting itself in half so it can have sex with itself. Alright, we're just gonna try this poem, and I don't know, you guys can see if you can put a beat to it if you want to. This is entitled Apology to the Other. My dear divine other, reflection of I, me has misunderstood, muddied, muddled the I in you, has compromised the me, dear flesh of my flesh and bone of my bones. Forgive me when you don't feel it. Don't feel like we are lovers, divine others who have not yet touched. Like we do not gaze bewildered by the same sky. Like we together are not glued to this same rock. Like we together, us, are not fraught by our gods and lords at times. Like we together, us, congregated in ourselves, do not balk at the solidarity in the face of diversity prospect at times. Dear divine, I, forgive me, have loved my many clones, have cut me in half and loved without loving you, and thus have loved no one and learned nothing and am no one, if not inside you and me, like these parts of us are made for each other to lose it, to lose me, to lose us under the sheets, under the macro umbrella category that above all micro umbrellas like white, purple, blue, black, Jew, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Zoroastrian, sane, insane, man, woman, hermaphrodite, single, married, rich, poor, bond, free, child, elder, disabled, gay, straight, thinker, worker, feeler, wise, non-believer, foolish, sinner, saint, Republican, Democrat, dirty, commie, etc., etc., says simply what I always forget. Image of God, plastered all over you. I see myself and I see God, whoever you are, whatever you worship, and I am in love with myself and you and God in this Trinitarian bliss. Listen, our existence is not separate like this matrix might tell us. The blood that pours from each of our wrists, slicing like we want to be Jesus, protesting against the machines, testifies that we pour the same color, brother. Let us mix. Let us mix. Like the fetus we came from is sick and the fetus we form is the cure. Like we don't want off this love high. Like solar power and wind power are not enough. Like the kingdom of God come into the animal kingdom with boundless unhypocritical grace. Let us mix. Like divine sinners dying to love, to live and live in our neighbor. Mix in each other's houses and with those with no houses and share. Like a dirty commie would be proud of us. Let us mix. Like contradiction in creeds does not mean contradiction in hearts. Like the rational necessity for the exclusion of what's not true will not pose a barricade against knowing none of us perceive perfectly one another. Together we many, let us mix. Like divine rebels fucking for forgiveness, let us mix with our political others, our sexual others, our religious others, our racial others, our cultural others, our whatever ever others. Not hijacking mystery for stereotypes or exchange for compromise. As we are, let us forgive as we are forever tied since that butterfly flap, the first butterfly effect binds us. As we are many images of one painter, dreams of Vishnu, muddied and muddled by fear and perception. Let us love, let us mix. I forgive you. None of us knew what the hell we were doing anyways.
Thank you, Andrew. I think Andrew's going to bring it now.
Yeah.
Andrew is coming up. Please welcome Andrew.
Welcome, welcome, welcome me. All right. Let's read some poetry. You guys could, I guess, play on my drums. So I've been doing all this partying and sitting around and adventuring and reading, trying to figure myself out. So this is what I got so far. It's called The Solipsism of God. So let me introduce myself. Hi, I'm God. I love myself a lot. Do you love me? Because I'm God, right? I don't prefer the title. I'd rather say, look, there's God, and there, and see, there's God everywhere, meaning there is all of my existence, an eternal infinity, funneled through that object, connected to everything, but I'm fucking weird, man. I'm the kind of guy who would create a problem and send myself to die and a cross to fix it. But I'm not that guy. He's not that impressive. I'm an oming, and I've spent existence trying to be someone else. So I projected into the sky, then collected myself together to find a body to die in. Spreading poetry like my cum haiku I find inside my sex drive. I am Brahman and an animal. Beyond good and evil, ugly and beautiful, and definitions from the lower realm. I go by he or she or it or me or my or us, are we, they, them, or you, and sometimes I hide my face from myself and wait for a text back when the textbook of my creation lies in front of me. I deify whatever I care about, and what I care about deifies me, and when the pain comes, I say ouch, and then I deify it too, and then repent and project back into the sky and kill myself again to see my corpus crucified and come back to life, a phoenix in the sky, burning and rebirthing in the ether of my being, sighing by and by while waiting for the next planet to create inside myself. People to live and die and love inside my nothingness, to fill me up until I give birth to ultimate meaning, something to live for, my life to give and take and hide from myself, to have someone to give back to and call them someone else. When there is no light or life or being beside me, I am the one and the gods, but they do not define me as much as I define them. I am free will and determinism joined in fusion, saying I am that I am and will be what I will be. Borderless infinity fit into this luxurious body to indwell with you theophanies needs on holy patios, the holy grounds of our nexus, the vortex of one origin breeding life from death and something from nothing, popping cherries in myself like virgins, giving birth by masturbating. I am the Mother Mary, giving birth to Christ, the harlot with a good story, raped by a Roman soldier. Sinners and saints are just many ways to touch myself, increasing stories I can tell to fall asleep and awaken in a brand new reality where a goddess was proclaiming my death to society, listening in vigor in horror at what they heard that they had killed him, the dictator with the testicles in the sky. I heard is called Jehovah, but he is not I. I've heard of him, but I'm that other guy. He's a pupil that went wrong in the halls of synagogues and Roman cathedrals, but he escaped corruption, finding repose in me. Call it manifest destiny or heresy, his ironic evolution, that he should die and resurrect into creative nihilism, filling modernity's broke philosophic cup. All I have is time and space to play Zeus, so I worship to brown nose myself and turn every evil into good for me. That is my theodicy. The youthful dilemma really got me bad. I turned to other gods and said, really? Are things good because I say, or do I say because they're good? And they, solipsistic representations of myself, replied, it is what it is, and you create what you create, and breath isn't tasteful if you don't feel it, so you smoke and choke and learn to breathe in deeply what you're doing to yourself. But you can remember what you're here to do, to pass through every hoop in this gymnasium, to see how many ways you can feel what you've made real. So I can speak to myself as a me, or I can speak to myself as a you. I mean, where do you think this came from but us? Deity, within or without the mysteries of quantum physics, will answer when we know whether we found ourselves or not. While we're speaking to ourselves in different tongues and dialects, it makes no difference how I split into words. I can make those words up and confess their impotence. An ego with sweaty hands exposing himself to egos that don't exist, but roles I play to progress this plot twist, most change in which is invisible, as the cosmos happens to myself inside of me, invisible, as I negotiate the bifurcations between sacred and profane, when I am above them both. To me, enlightenment is just another state of mind, like falling in love and suicidal thoughts. It is a place I can go to soothe my ghostliness, standing above everything I do and say, proclaiming the gospel of my undefilable divinity that may exist or not, but that satisfies me, whatever it is. It's getting towards there. A Kierkegaard. To soothe Nietzsche's mad in mind, though they never got to meet, their bodies laugh as they disintegrate, absorbing and recycling and reincarnating to greet the ground of being, which turns out to be me. Like a trip of psychedelic insight, I journey on millennia, looking up, seeing my face in the clouds when I glance for answers. There I am, and you can call that empty if you want, but it depends on how I choose to see my face. Each epistemological uncertainty of personal insecurity I paint and then erase. That I could ever know anything, I am so small inside myself. Doubting, like a goddess renouncing her authority on trial as we ask of her an answer that she can't provide, but that the decision to create was a temptation unabidable. Saying if we could see the big picture, we would probably be happy about something arbitrary, but happy nevertheless. Beyond subjectivity, objectivity, relativity, irrelevant to me, for I am a God that divines my own creativity. That is my religion. I write scriptures and I read them, and frolic by and by, pursuing my identity. I rush to smell the allure of my biggest self and call that the God beyond God, writing a story about himself with a brain stem, doing this shit, acting like an idiot for fun, appalled at my natural refinement for loving myself as soon as I give myself permission, and calling reason a paradox within a paradox, and letting that be my reason. Thank you.
Now that was Andrew bringing it. So let's have another hand for Andrew.
Yeah.
Okay, are you ready?